Are you ready to accelerate the growth of your business? Welcome to the Revenue Growth Podcast. This is the place for business owners, sales leaders, and marketing professionals to get ideas and inspiration to drive exponential revenue growth. Each week, you'll get actionable insights from the world's leading marketing and sales thought leaders and practitioners. Are you ready to grow? Let's join our host, Daryl Amy, author of Revenue Growth Engine.
Welcome back to the Revenue Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Daryl Amy, trailblazer and growth architect. Are you struggling with prospects and clients that are unreceptive to you and your value proposition? Well, you're in the right place. Our guest today, Tom Stanfill, is going to coach us on how to create receptivity. If you have a sales team and want to boost results, I want you to get to know Selling from the Heart. What's great about our sponsor, Selling from the Heart, is how it takes a different approach to driving sales. The goal? Build trust quickly with clients and prospects through authenticity. The result? More effective prospecting, higher close rates, and more referrals. Best of all, the Selling from the Heart methodology works with your existing sales model. So to learn more, visit www.sellingfromtheheart.net and make sure to listen to me and my co-host, Larry Levine, each week on the Selling from the Heart podcast. Well, we're in for a treat today. Our guest is Tom Stanfill, author of the incredible book, Unreceptive. Right now, customers' willingness to work with sellers and evaluate their solutions has declined 120% in the last 3 years alone. The success rate in getting meetings with new prospects, now less than 2%. In this environment, Tom believes the only way to guarantee success in sales is to acquire a new mindset and a new skill set so we can stop selling and start focusing on creating receptivity. Tom, welcome to the Revenue Growth Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Daryl. I was excited about this. I'm
Absolutely.
reading about you, looking at your website, the kind of content that you publish and produce is very exciting. And you're a trailblazer and a growth architect. I love hanging out with trailblazers.
You can't do anything in sales or marketing or leadership for that matter. And we've got sales and marketing leaders listening to this podcast. You can't do anything unless you have receptivity. But those stats, that's pretty dismal. Down 120% in the last 3 years alone.
That study, those numbers came from a study that was conducted by McKinsey, and that actually shocked me. It's also, those numbers are related to customers who are in the process of evaluating a solution.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just unreceptive to talking to a rep. They're in the process.
Cold calls or
they're in the process of evaluating.
Process.
Exactly. I think a lot of it has to do with the amount of information available to the customer. Not only that only diminishes the need for, the mind of the customer diminishes the need for a sales rep, but it also creates so much noise in the market that they're just overwhelmed. People are just overwhelmed. And so they don't want to talk to another person. I mean, you'll see companies that we work with and internally, customers will download information, say they want to talk to somebody, but it's even difficult to get them to have a meeting because they're over. They may not know what they downloaded. They just are like, get too many emails. I read an article by somebody on LinkedIn the other day that said they got back from vacation and they had 4,000 emails in their inbox. I'm like, that's just crazy.
Yeah, John Ferrara, one of our former guests, CEO of Nimble, says my email inbox is a slaughterhouse. But this is the challenge right now. And I was actually talking recently with Brent Adamson, and we all know Brent from the Challenger sale. In his article that he published in Harvard Business Review earlier this year, is the data shows, like we were talking about, buyers are overwhelmed. There is so much information, and the problem is not only is there so much information, a lot of it's good information.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's not just bad stuff. And so now, you're faced as a seller with, you got this overwhelmed buyer with lots of pressure, lots of things competing for their attention.
Right.
What do you do to create receptivity in that highly resistant environment?
Well, it boils down to really 3 P's that we talk about in the book, but is priority, pressure, and point of view. That's all right. And I want to back up and kind of set the stage for why we need to shift, because I think it's really important for people to understand that every time you're talking to a customer, they're in one of two zones. They're either emotionally open, because this is kind of what we're talking about when we talk about receptivity. They're either emotionally open or receptive, or they're emotionally closed or unreceptive.
Right.
Right. They're always in one of those two zones. And so what we've been talking about is the number of people that are open or receptive is in steep decline. The number of people that are unreceptive is growing rapidly. And I think it's well over 80% of the people are unreceptive. And when you try to sell somebody, or you try to influence, whether you're talking to them personally or it's in a business situation, when you try to talk to somebody that's emotionally unreceptive or emotionally closed, whether it's the subjects are closed or the doors closed, the more you try to sell them, the more closed they become. So think about that. So if you sell, you lose. If you don't sell, you lose. And so it's like, what do we do? Which is what you're asking. What do we do?
Yeah.
And there's 5 main barriers that a seller will face, what I call the receptivity barriers that a seller will face, or anybody will face when they're trying to influence or persuade somebody. And so really, like we talked about, there's a mindset, there's a skill set that I need to learn, but a lot of it falls under these 3 P's. It's pressure, priority, and point of view.
Okay.
Like the customer, because we got to remember, they're not rejecting a solution, they're rejecting a sales call. So we think our instincts, which is sort of what I call the traditional approach, is to take them to court, make our case, come up with a real logical argument. And then if we make the best argument, we're going to win, which does not work on my wife. And
some receptivity issues, huh, Tom?
Yeah. I thought, I thought when I got married, I'm like, she'd say something. I go, I'll bring out the flip chart. Let me make my 3 points and I can prove to you that I'm right. And let's make an argument. And then the judge is going to rule and they're going to say, well, who's right? And, that's not how it works. And that's not how it works in business. We think it's how it works, but it doesn't. And so we are facing these people that are, emotionally closed. And priority has to do with who's the priority, who's the hero of the story. And that's a thing that kind of seems like, okay, that's an easy thing to talk about. And everybody goes, of course, we need to be customer centric, but actually we really are the hero of the story. The gravitational pull to self is so strong that we have to stop. And this is part of the mindset. We have to stop and make a decision to decide that the customer is the priority. They are first. And if we don't, the gravitational pull to self is so strong, and that we will ultimately reveal that our motive is self-centered.
Yeah.
And so we talk about in the book, how do we become other-centered? How do we make the decision? What's the process that we can embrace that will ultimately serve the customer and demonstrate that they are the priority? And the other 2 P's are pressure. How do we eliminate pressure from the process? And we teach a concept called drop the rope, that there's a tug of war that exists where we always are trying to pull the customer, because of our role, try to pull them in our direction. And so we've got to drop the rope and eliminate pressure. And so we eliminate the tug of war. And there's ways to do that. And then I'll stop here in a second after I saw the last P, and then we can dive in whatever direction you want to go into. The last one is point of view. We need to validate their point of view. What is on their whiteboard? What's important to them? And also, not only having that information informs us on how to position our recommendation or how to position a meeting, but it also creates the receptivity that we need to create so that they'll listen to our point of view. So what happens when we validate their point of view is it's more than just capturing information. It's also creating a bridge and creating a foundation to be heard. Absolutely. So those are the 3 big P's, but we go into how to apply that in each one of the 5 barriers.
I think that's fantastic. And that first step of just being able to pause and say another P, pause. There's a pause. Who's the hero of the story? Because everyone's corporate brochure and everybody's sales pitch says we're customer centric. We have customer vision. And all of that. Everyone says that, but coaches, how do you enter that space? Like, how do you? Because look, I'm a sales professional. I'm concerned about hitting quota. I've got, a family to feed. I've got goals. All that stuff, is real and can be top of mind. how do you flip the switch to be able to walk in with that intent?
The first thing that I tell myself, and is also talk about this in the book, is that motive is ultimately transparent. You have 43 muscles in your face. And I don't know how many tones of voices. I can't remember. I did studies on that. But so your facial expressions, your tone of voice will ultimately, and what you ultimately will do, your filter will break down, and you are going to reveal somewhere in the process that your motive is self-centered, unless you stop and reset what I call reset your compass, because our compass, compass works by always pointing north. Like we know the strongest magnetic field is in the North Pole, right? So that's the pull, right?
Yeah.
So the compass works by knowing where the North Pole is. Our strongest magnetic field is to self. And so we have to stop and make a decision to reset our compass and say, okay, and this is the other thing I tell myself is motive is transparent. So the customer's ultimately going to know, which leads to the second point, which is if I choose to make the customer the hero of the story, I'm going to be more successful.
Right.
they're going to listen to me. I'm going to be communicate things that are going to make sense to them. I'm going to come up with a process that helps them make the best decision. I'm going to introduce myself in a way that's relevant to what's on their whiteboard. I'm going to be curious and try to figure out what's best for them rather than pushing so all these things will happen if I'm other-centered, and what we call making the customer the hero of the story is really, we just talk about being other-centered versus self-centered. So I think that's what you have to do. You have to understand that you're going to be more successful if you put the customer first. The other thing that you need to do is, or I guess a tactical thing we talk about in being other-centered, is meeting the customer's greatest need. The customer's greatest need is not their business need. It's their emotional needs. And other-centered people move beyond the stated need and dive deeper into unstated needs and unstated emotional needs. And when you start to meet the customer's unstated needs, which is really to be loved, accepted, and valued, then they're going to listen to you, and they're going to build a relationship, and they're going to follow you, and they're going to tell you things they don't tell other people. Because people make emotional decisions and support them with intellectual alibis. It's not just making logical decisions. So, being other-centered and putting the customer first is very practical, and ultimately is going to help you get more meetings and win more deals.
I think you bring up a really good point, though, about I'm just thinking now about the difference between marketing and sales. And you know, we had a great conversation on the podcast several episodes back with JJ Peterson, the co-host of Story Brand, Love Story. And you're the client's the hero, the prospect's the hero, you're the guide. Right. I get all that. You can market to that and do a great job marketing that. But when you get face to face as a sales professional, your face will betray you, right? You cannot fake your way through that. And that's, my podcast co-host and Selling from the Heart, Larry Levine, would say, your authentic self sells you, right? And if that authentic self is self-centered, right, it's going to sell you in the way you don't want to. So I think you bring a really, really good point in terms of like your intentions will betray you. But also that flip side of realizing, hey, the best way to actually hit your goal is to put the other person first, be the guide, and have a good heart around that. So that brings us to the second point. I love this whole analogy of dropping the rope. Why are we in a tug of war with our prospects?
I think it's because they believe in, they've been trained by working with sales reps, which I've been trained too when I'm working with a sales rep, is they're going to try to pull you to their position. I was walking into Best Buy about 3 years ago before the book came out, and I used this. I told this story in the book, and I'm looking for a television. Okay. I don't know much about television. I'm not an IT expert or a video expert. I don't know anything. It's time for a new television, and I don't have a clue really what's going on. I'm going into Best Buy, and I don't know what I need. I walk over to the huge display, all of the televisions spread across. There's there's 20, 30, 40 different sizes. I don't have a clue, all different prices. And I need help. So I'm trying to figure this out. Sales rep walks up to me, says, "Can I help you?" And you know what I said.
No, I'm
I
just
said,
looking.
no, I'm just looking.
Right.
I've asked that question. I can't tell you the number of countries I've asked that question.
Right.
And reps will all say the same thing. I'm just looking.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just looking. And why did I say that? Because I feel like he's gonna be trying to pull me to a TV where he's gonna get a spiff, or he's gonna try to sell me something that's not gonna get
Yes.
experience. There's a tug of war. And so I
Yeah.
say, I'm just looking. And he says to me, he drops the rope. He says to me, hey, listen, I'm not on commission. If you need help, I'm happy to help you. I'll be right over there. And he basically eliminated tension. And I said, wait, I need help.
Well,
and then I said, come
right,
here.
yeah.
And then I just started asking much questions.
What do we do?
Now what we need to do in sales is the same thing. We need to eliminate the tension. And it really comes from a psychological principle. It's called the reactance theory, I think is what the name for it is that when someone tells us not to do something, we want to do it. Or when someone tries to control us, we want to be in control. We want to have the freedom of choice, and we feel like we're losing it. When somebody says, put your seatbelt on, or in reaction, it's, I'm not going to wear my seatbelt, even though we know, we should wear a seatbelt. But when someone says stand, you want to sit. It's just it's a human principle. And so when we feel like our people are going to push us to do something, whether it's a waiter telling us we need to order something, we resist that. So what we need to do is the simplest way is to think about the customer has four main options. Not to buy partial, buy total solution, work for somebody, or buy the competitor's solution. And what we need to make them feel super comfortable that we are going to put all options on the table and explore all those options with them. And if we do, they're going to be much more likely to embrace our recommendation if we just keep pushing one option, which is we want you to buy the total solution and we want you to buy it from us. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be able to stand beside them and look at all those options and say, hey, let's talk about this. And genuinely mean that. And what that means is that most likely we're going to trade the illusion of control, which we don't have, for the option of influence.
Yeah.
That's all we want. We want the opportunity to influence.
Beautiful. Trade the illusion of control for the opportunity of influence. I think that's such a beautiful line and well said. And so this tug of war, I mean, you're absolutely right. If someone tells me to sit, I want to stand. Someone tells me to keep my seatbelt on until the plane gets to the gate, I want to take it off, right? I'm trapped. It's that reaction.
The whole mask. You've got to wear a mask.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I don't want to wear a mask now.
Right now. Yeah. So all of the resistance. And so creating that is so powerful. And I love, going back, we talked about Brent Adamson earlier in the sense making concept is saying, let's figure out how to get on the other side of the table alongside the decision maker and help them make sense out of the 32 TVs that are on the wall. Help them make sense of the four options they have, and that getting that resistance down by dropping the rope. What are some other stories about how you've dropped or salespeople have dropped the rope? I'm curious how this.
I'll use a personal example because it's scary. And by the way, I want to say, unlike the Best Buy situation where the rep was walking away, we need to make the customer feel that way, but not leave. And sometimes people hear me talk about drop the rope and they're like, hey, if you need us, let us know. And they walk away. That's not drop the rope. Drop the rope is eliminating pressure from difficult conversations, like the customer saying things like, we really like your competitor. Right? Dropping the rope is, okay, well, I understand that. I've heard good things about him. Tell me about that. It's not like, okay, thanks, bye. Call me if you need me.
Yeah, or they're dirt bags.
Right. That's pulling the rope. You shouldn't have chose them.
Right.
But how do we drop the rope and continue the conversation versus drop the rope and exit the conversation?
Oh, good.
But I'll give you an example from a personal situation. It's like when my daughter first started dating, and she, her first real boyfriend, quote unquote, she fell in love. And I'd heard some things from her brothers. And this was, my daughter's 35 now. So this is, it's not
old news.
Yeah, this is old news. So I could tell this story. Right. But this is when she's starting to, she's dating. I think she's 16, and her brother is telling me stories because he played football with the guy, and he's telling me things about the guy she's dating, and I'm not really that crazy about him.
Yikes!
Right. So I want to go in her room and say, talk to her about Philip. I'd say, hey, so tell me about this guy, and she could tell her defenses are up. She's like, here comes dad to tell me who I can and can't date and what I can and
Right.
can't do. She feels that tug of war,
Mhm.
parent, child, tug of war,
Mhm.
seller, customer, tug of war. So I started the conversation off and I said, hey, I want you to know you can date whoever you want. And I just paused. I said, as long as you abide by the rules of the household and you're not in danger, I can't stop you from dating. You're at an age that I can't stop you from who you're going to hang out with. I just can't control you. And so I'm not going to try. What I care about, this is the other centerpiece. What I care is I just want you to be happy and I don't want you to get hurt. I said, so I'd love to learn more about the guy you're dating and tell me about that. And so we just started having conversations and I started walking with her. But it wasn't like, I will tell you who you will date and what you will and won't do.
Right.
My grandmother told my parents that and they eloped.
Yep.
My grandmother my grandmother told my mother, you will not date. My dad's name is Tom Stanfill as well.
Right.
You will not date Tom Stanfill. And they said, well, you know what?
Okay.
We're going to go get married.
Yep.
And I have tons of business examples and sales examples, but
Right.
ultimately it's, I remember meeting early at Aslan, early days of Aslan and meeting with our first really major Fortune 500 client. And I was meeting with the head of a division where we were doing a little pilot program and it was FedEx. And the guy said, hey, listen, we're not really interested in your training program. We get free training from corporate and it's one of the biggest companies in the industry. And so we probably don't need it. And he was you could tell he was closed.
Right.
And I said, listen, if you get free training from XYZ company, the last thing you need is to work with us. And you could tell he starts moving away to moving in. Right. Oh yeah. It's a good point. And yeah, I don't know if I'm really that crazy about it, but it's free. And I said, yeah. And I said, but you've got an inside sales organization. And if they can address the 18 unique challenges of selling over the phone, then you definitely should work with them and you shouldn't work with Aslan because it's free and they're a good company and they've done a lot of great things. And he said, wait a minute, what do you mean the 18 unique challenges? So we started unpacking that. I said, I don't know their program. Do they address these? And he could tell I was creating the space for him to assess that. And we were figuring this out together versus, well, they're wrong and you need to work with us. And here's why.
Yes. Yeah.
Which goes back to my motive. Is my motive to win that opportunity, which I want to win the opportunity.
Of course.
But either it's about me winning or it's about helping him solve his problem. And if I choose to help him solve his problem, I'm going to win more deals.
Absolutely love it. I love it. I'm having flashbacks now to different sales situations where I've dropped the rope and others where I've held onto the rope and some where I've yanked on the rope. Right. Yeah. And those don't end well because we dig our heels in. And I think this is super, super powerful. Yeah. Well, the third point, coach us on the third point in the remaining minutes we have together, because this is such gold. And by the way, everyone listening in, if you haven't already hit pause and gone to buy Unreceptive on Amazon or wherever you buy books, you need to get this book. This is fantastic stuff, Tom. So coach us on the third point.
Point of view. Yeah.
Point of view.
I'm going to talk about point of view in two ways. One, when you want to get a meeting, the most important thing you do, most important strategy of getting a meeting is developing your position. Another way to say your position is answering the question, the central question, why should I meet with you? That's really what the customer, why should I meet with you? So your position is answering that question. And there's three elements of it. It's captivate, elevate, and separate. So if you capture, first thing you got to do is capture their attention. And you capture their attention by talking about their point of view. In other words, and another way to say their point of view is what's on their whiteboard. That's their point of view. It's like if you think about, they're sitting in an office and their whiteboard is what they care about, their point of view.
Right. I've got mine right over there. I'm looking at it.
Yeah. It's like mine's right over there, and I have what I care about is on.
That's right.
My point of view. That's the way I see the world, and I define the point of view as basically that's something I want. Everybody wants something. And it's their plan to get there. Right. And so it's really simple. I want something, whether they have it on their whiteboard or it's actually in their head. If you can picture their whiteboard, and what does it say? That's how you capture their attention.
Nice.
It's their point of view. Another way to say that is if I show you a picture of you, you will always look at it 100% of the time. And so what we do is when we prospect, we try to show pictures of ourselves. Let me show you a picture of me. No one cares about a picture of you. I mean, when people reach out to me on LinkedIn, when people send me emails, I get hundreds of them every week. They talk about themselves. And this goes back to, if the customer is really the hero of the story, you need to know what's on their whiteboard, their point of view.
Yep.
So that's the first thing. It helps you get meetings by articulating their point of view. And then the other thing is that when you finally do meet with them, the first thing you want to do is validate their point of view. So you have a point of view and they have a point of view. I think about it. There's sort of two polarized points of view. You're on the North Pole and you see your point of view is completely different than the customer who's on the South Pole, and that's their point of view. So I need to take the trip and go down and see their point of view. What's important to them? What do they care about? What are their pain? What is on their whiteboard? What's their plan to get there? Who else are they talking to? How are they making the decision? And I need to validate. So, because when I do that, there's two things happen. One, there's an emotional connection that happens when I take the trip, see their point of view, feed it back to them, and they say exactly. Mm-hmm. And so it's a critical element of receptivity is when I can understand them, listen to them, feed it back to them. And then the other thing is I can then share. The other thing that happens when I take the trip is I now have information that I need to determine what's the best recommendation I can make, what's important to them. So it's information that I need to be able to make the right recommendation. So just it's a long answer to your question, but there's a lot packed into that point of view.
I love it. So practical. And this discussion we're having today is extremely timely because I've heard it said we live in a post-trust society. People are very skeptical, less receptive than ever. And as we can develop the skills you're talking about today, and as we can help our sales teams develop those skills and leaders, this goes for us too, because if you're in leadership, you're selling a vision. And this conversation thread is extremely powerful. And Tom, I just want to say, number one, thank you for sharing all of this with us today, because this is the type of podcast you want to rewind and take some notes. And second of all, I want to say thank you for writing the book, because taking the time to put all this in a book, I know that was a lot of work on your part. It's a huge gift to the world. Tell us, how can we get the book and some of the resources you put together?
Well, thank you, Daryl. I appreciate you saying that. It was a labor of love, but it was a labor.
It was labor. I know that.
Yeah, it was a labor. But yeah, I do believe in these concepts because I've seen it work in raising 4 children in my marriage, and the hundreds of thousands of sellers we've trained and leaders we've trained over the years. It really does work because the percentage of people that are open to talking to a seller just continues to shrink.
Yeah.
So more information about the book, you can go to unreceptivebook.com, and that's going to provide some videos about the book. You also can download an excerpt if you're not sure that's something you want to invest in at this point. Also check out aslantraining.com. That's you can learn more about the services we offer to corporations and the training that we provide. So that's probably, awesome. And I'd love you to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'd love
we'll put all that in the show
notes.
And Tom, once again, thank you on behalf of the Revenue Growth audience. This has just been phenomenal. And we're cheering you on. I want to say I'm receptive to what you're doing. So you want
thank you, Daryl. I appreciate
you, man. And thank you to everybody in the Revenue Growth Podcast audience. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, and most of all, those of you who have left reviews for the podcast. It helps us spread the word, and that allows us to continue to get the incredible guests that we have. We've got a great roster of folks coming on the rest of the summer, so make sure to tune in. Our goal is to provide practical ideas that help you accelerate your revenue growth. So whether you're in sales, whether you're in marketing, whether you lead a company, our hope is that we've brought ideas today that you're going to be receptive to. And by the way, if you haven't bought Unreceptive yet, go buy this book right now. I think you're absolutely going to appreciate it after listening to what Tom had to say. In fact, you probably are going to want to get a copy for everybody on your sales team. That's Unreceptive. Grab your copy right now. Go to Tom's website. We've got great summer of guests ahead. Thank you to everybody who's out there driving for revenue growth right now. And until next time, let's get going and let's get growing.